I'd like to give you some tips as to how to prepare for the exam for this particular component of the RANZCP exam. Now, critical analysis is best learned by putting it into practice, putting these concepts that we learn into practice. And the best way of doing this is by reading actual research papers. So what I'd like you to do is to print out research papers from a range of journals, randomized controlled trials, systematic reviews and meta-analyses, case control studies, cohort studies, qualitative studies, etc. And keep a compilation for yourself. Then go to sightseeinghub.com and print out the critical appraisal worksheets, the critical analysis worksheets. And as you read the papers, use the questions in those worksheets to help understand these concepts. So please do keep this in mind. Critical analysis is like learning a completely new language. For example, if you were to learn Italian, you could read a book and rote learn. However, this wouldn't necessarily make it easy for you to go to the country and speak it fluently. The best way of learning a language, as we know, is by immersing yourself into the culture, into the language, and using it on a day-to-day basis. So one of the other ways of learning the concepts well is by presenting at journal clubs and using journal clubs effectively as well. So please do keep this in mind. Two important things: read papers and use the critical appraisal worksheets and implement them in practice. With that in mind, let's get going with the presentation. So essentially, this is what critical analysis is about in a nutshell. What I'm going to take you through is the key aims of research. Before we jump into the details of critical analysis, let's take a step back and understand what researchers are trying to do, what research is really trying to achieve. We think about two variables, A and B. A is the independent, the predictor or the exposure variable or the intervention variable, whilst B is the disease or the outcome variable. What we're trying to do is to establish an association between A and B. Now, this association may be present or not present. We want to establish the truth. We frame this question as a null hypothesis. We say there is no relationship between A and B, and we aim to correctly reject this null hypothesis. The null hypothesis is there is no difference between A and B. Now, what happens is, in attempting to establish or to reject the null hypothesis, there are other factors that play a part. And those factors are confounders, variables that are associated with A and influence B. And the other factors are biases. So the main aim in research is to minimize the influence of confounders or adjust for confounders and to minimize biases. Therefore, we can then examine the true association between A and B. Now, we know that when trying to establish the association between A and B, the study is susceptible to errors. Like in all things in life, whenever we're trying to do something, there is the possibility of an error. So we've got to keep some sort of margin of error or margin of safety. This is where two errors come into research, the type 1 and the type 2 errors. Type 1 error is P, remember it as P, is false positive. This is linked to alpha, which is linked to p-value. Type 1 error is P linked to alpha, which is linked to p-value. This P stands for false positive, which means that the type 1 error is the error of falsely rejecting the null hypothesis. Type 2 error, draw a line horizontally, and this is a false negative. This is linked to beta, which is linked to power. False negative, which is nothing but falsely accepting the null hypothesis.